Are you a master manipulator? Is it okay to manipulate? Are there some skills we can glean from this skill that I'm not even sure we are allowed to talk about? Let's do it.
Maximize your influence. Kurt Mortensen is the author of Persuasion IQ, Laws of Charisma, and the best-selling book, Maximum Influence.
So this manipulation, we got to talk about it. Is it ever okay to cross the line? How do you know when you're being manipulated? Again, we're not doing an ethics class here. I'm emotionally scarred from ethics class. Hey, ethics are good, but a lot of times these professors, these teachers, just kind of screw with your brain. Is it okay to do this? What about this? What if they're going to do it to you first? Not going to do that to you. You decide where to draw the line. Everyone kind of draws it a little bit differently. Hey, you do you decide. Hey, this is podcast 513. Welcome back. Good to have you here. Tell your family, friends, and enemies about the podcast. You can find it on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and better podcasters near you. Hey, I had to throw that in there somewhere. As always, the links, the specials, is at MaximizeYourInfluence.com. Send me an email at Kurt, K-U-R-T, at MaximizeYourInfluence.com. Anything we use on the podcast, you get the gold version of InfluenceUniversity.com. Check it out. You can even test it out for free. So let's get into that geeky, scarly article. This one's interesting. Comes from Journalism Studies, University of Michigan, and Professor Ariel Hassel. Talks about more feelings of misinformation, more news avoidance. And I agree with this. I've seen this in my life. It's like, why read the news? I don't know who's telling the truth. But this is what they found out, is that people have more difficulty distinguishing fact from fiction in the United States. They're more likely to feel news fatigue and avoid news altogether. And I'll add, it's probably a good thing to avoid the news, because the news can suck the life out of you, and you don't know who's telling you the truth. I mean, you take any big political event, you go to 2 or 3 different news sources, you're like, okay, people, did you see the same thing? What's going on here? The researchers found that people who identify as Democrats begin relying more on nonpartisan news media when feeling misinformed, while those that are Republicans reported using less media overall. And then there's sounds like, all right, who knows, why try? So they found the more confusing or difficult to navigate the news environment, the more actively you avoid news. And they also included in news avoidance people who just didn't want to talk about politics. So they found not only did you stop consuming news, but you're staying out of the conversation completely. And they found this especially true leading up to political elections. So bottom line, the amount of information that comes out from so many different sources drives people away from the news. I mean, if we had a way to know what was true and what was not true, it probably wouldn't be an issue. So they say there's this paradox that the more information that is available, the more people just opt out because it becomes too hard for them to make sense of it. So we know trust is an all-time low. That's part of it. In fact, I saw a study a while back that the United States, out of all the industrialized countries, has the lowest trust in media. There were some countries in Europe, mostly Scandinavia, that had a much higher trust in their media content. I mean, this goes back, 10, 20, 30 years ago, there were only 3 news sources. There wasn't an internet. Everyone had to shoot down the middle. Now, you watch the news that talks to you. Your social media feed talks to you. That's why everyone has no idea what is true and what is not. There you have it. That's our geeky, scarly article, which takes us to this week, the Persuasion Ninja. So I was in Virginia this last week, looking for a place to eat, a good breakfast place to eat. All the locals recommended this place. Without hesitation, this is a place to go for breakfast. There was a line outside the door. Almost didn't get in line. Then I remember the lesson I learned in Hawaii that no line, not good. So I endured the line, and it was really good. So the engagement, the social validation, the food was good. I'd recommend it. I'd come back for more. But it was interesting, too, that attached to this restaurant was an antique store. In fact, they had places you could eat within this antique store, massive antique store, stuff everywhere. It was like 2 or 3 floors, just incredibly massive stuff everywhere. And I'll add an old study I read a while back that antique stores keep it messy for a reason because it's like a treasure hunt. If it's too uncluttered, too clean, then it's not a treasure hunt and they don't sell as much. And this thing had everything. Clutter, treasure hunt. And the reason I bring this up is I would never go to an antique store ever. I would never drive to an antique store. It's just not my thing. But there it was. I was involved. I was engaged. I started to look around. It was really interesting. That's the law of involvement. The more you get people engaged mentally, physically, get to see things, more people, that makes them easier to influence, persuade. Every little step you can take towards persuading them a little bit at a time makes it easier and easier. Getting someone to put on their shoes to go out, that little step makes it easier for them to want to go out. So kudos to this restaurant. I'll have to track down the name, put it in the text for this podcast. But engagement, involvement, social validation, good food. You, my friends, are the persuasion ninja of the week. So let's get into this manipulation. Listener email.
Oh boy!
Comes from Barbara. She says, Kurt, is it ever okay to manipulate? Do some of the tools you teach cross the line? She says, I'm specifically thinking about NLP. Does that cross the manipulation line? Well, NLP is neurolinguistic programming. You've got to decide. Let's talk about different elements here. What is manipulation? How do you know when you're being manipulated? Let's talk about it. So what is manipulation? Basically, it's unethical behavior or coercion driven by the goal of exploiting, controlling, doing something for your own personal gain. It's not a win-win. Your intent's to destroy. And I'll just say any persuasion tool I can teach you, including NLP, you could cross the line. You could use anything for great good or great evil. When I was researching laws of charisma, as you know, there have been charismatic leaders around the world that have destroyed people, hurt countries, and there's been charismatic leaders that still have a great influence, that help people, brought people up, help countries become better. It's like gravity. It's just there. Is gravity good or bad? It depends if you're falling from a tree or you're walking. It's just neutral. And these things I teach you and we talk about are neutral. You have to decide how you use them. So first of all, why do people manipulate others? I think one of the big ones is they just don't have any other tools. When you look at bullying, coercion, intimidation, those people have just given up. I'll yell, I'll scream, I'll use threats because it works. It does. What's Al Capone's quote, the famous gangster? Hey, you get pretty far with a kind word, but you get much further with a kind word and a gun. Not that I'm encouraging that, but that's what some people do. They just don't have any other tools. It's all they use. It works. Maybe it's all they've seen in their environment. Other people manipulate because they love the control. It's kind of a thrilling feeling to control people. Some people do it because of a low self-esteem. Because these people, they manipulate because they have a lack of self-confidence, a low self-esteem. They don't know how to get what they want. And this is true for bullies. This is what they do. Some people do it for the personal gain, especially say in a negotiation. They love the attention, maybe the power, the money. And for some, I'll just add, it's just easier. It's what they know. It's quick, fast. I'm not saying it's right, but that's why people manipulate. So is it ever okay to use manipulation? I mean, you decide. This is not an ethics course. I mean, you got to back up and say, okay, is this a win-win? Did you reveal the information you need? What's your intent here? But if your intent is controlling somebody, being dishonest, being deceptive, winning at any cost, yeah, you're probably crossing the line. Especially if you do this long-term, it can lead to very negative consequences for your relationships, for building trust. But there are times manipulation can be put in a positive context. I took a look at artificial intelligence to say, okay, when is it okay to manipulate? Of course, they are always covering the rear end. They don't like to talk about it. But they say it's okay to manipulate when there's positive influence, when it positively impacts someone's behavior. Maybe if you got someone to drug rehab, you manipulate them to come to an intercept. They say if the results are good, you can manipulate. They say negotiations and in business interactions, there's some strategic communication. You're revealing what's necessary. You're framing arguments. You're focusing on key points, offering incentives. Some people consider that manipulation, and that's how the game is played. And I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just putting it out there. One that was interesting, they said creative expression, maybe in movies or books or entertainment where the author or the director is manipulating emotions, perceptions. Storytellers do this. When they're using pacing and imagery and symbolism to invoke specific responses, they say that's okay. That's a form of manipulation. In therapy or counseling, professionals may use certain techniques to guide clients toward a positive behavioral change or an emotional insight. That can involve some manipulation by changing beliefs, reframing perspectives, encouraging self-reflection. They say it's all right. So you decide on this one. They cover their ear and say, manipulation is generally discouraged when it involves deceit and exploitation. True, and true. So how do you know if someone's manipulating you? Some people are so good at that you don't know till you've lost the negotiation and you're like, wait a minute. So some things you can take a look for. The gut check. If you're feeling confused or doubtful, it doesn't feel right, you're uncertain, you're second guessing yourself, follow that gut, follow that feeling, follow those subconscious triggers. Those could be signs of manipulation. Manipulators use a lot of guilt, especially in negotiation. You wouldn't do that to an elderly person, would you? A lot of guilt tripping. So they use guilt to control others. If I go to the archives, I talked about guilt and shame and how people use those. Now remember the difference between guilt. Guilt, I feel bad for doing it. Shame, they also use where there's something wrong with you. Trying to use guilt, there's something wrong with you. You should feel this way. Trying to make you feel guilty or responsible for their problems or emotions. Well, you made me feel that way. And we know with anger or any emotion, no one can make you feel anger. You're in charge of your emotions, your emotional intelligence. So with that, emotional blackmail. So they're using your emotions against you to get you to comply with their demands, threats of harm, or even withdrawal of affection. One you see too with manipulators, they're playing the victim. They're trying to get sympathy. They're exaggerating and making up problems to gain your support and control your actions. One you see especially in relationships, love bombing or flattery. So you're going to see a lot of praise just to create a sense of obligation, dependency. It feels good. Who doesn't want to be love bombed? Who doesn't love praise and flattery? But they're using it way too much. And you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Another one, they might try to isolate you. They don't want other people to come to the meeting, negotiation. They'll try to isolate you from friends, family, supportive networks to gain more control over you. They might even try to sabotage your relationships with others. We see this in cults all the time. That's like number one cult rule. Isolation gets you away from your support, your friends. People are going to say, you're being crazy. That's a cult. They take you away from that. Way too much pressure. You have to make a decision right now. The deal's only good for another 5 minutes. Manipulators often create a sense of urgency to prevent you from thinking things through. Or remember, talking to other people. You don't know if they're going to laugh, they're cry, they're inconsistent, they're being mean here, they're kind over here, they're love bombing over here, they're trying to keep you off balance. You have no idea. They can laugh, cry, yell. A lot of manipulators withhold important information that you need that hurts your ability to make a decision. And they're going to leverage your weaknesses, exploit your insecurities, your fears. That helps them gain control. Basically pushing you down, which pulls them up. They might bring up past mistakes, sensitive topics, manipulate your emotions, make fun of your mom, make fun of your clothes, say you look terrible. We see this in negotiation. I call them the dirty deeds, but that's why it's so important to really know you're being manipulated. So how do you protect yourself? So again, be strategic. Can you use some of these? Probably. But be aware when people are doing it to you. I mean, really, how do you protect yourself? Set the boundaries and rules ahead of time. Look, here are the hours. This is what we're doing. This is the information we're going through. Do it before the negotiation. Do it before the meeting. Let the manipulator know what behaviors are acceptable and unacceptable and stick to your limits. No, we said we weren't going to do that. Do we need to take a break? And this is very important negotiation. Identify the tactic. Hey, are you manipulating again? Is there any reason the temperature's at 80 degrees? Are you guys doing good cop, bad cop? Identify it. So set the boundaries ahead of time, and if they cross the line, call them out and stick to your rules. And seek clarity. Ask the direct questions. Get the straightforward answers. Again, call them out. You didn't answer that. Can you give me more information? I can't make a decision. That information's too ambiguous. It's incomplete. And you have to decide at that moment when they're manipulating you or using these dark psychological tricks, are you walking? I mean, some people you have to negotiate with. A lot of buyers, purchasers, and negotiators are registered psychopaths. That's just how they are. They have no feelings. Not the murdering type, just the no feeling type. They just want to win. So you have to decide, all right, do I have to negotiate with this person? And am I walking? Do I want to do business with this person? And take your time. Don't rush into any decisions. Don't feel pressured. Remember, that's one of their techniques. Back you in a corner, you have 5 minutes. No, I'll need 24 hours on this. Bring someone else that can also say, yep, manipulation, yep, they crossed the line. Again, they don't want you to do that. They want you all by yourself. And trust your instincts. Trust that feeling. Remember, that gut feeling is a very valuable indicator of manipulation. Don't get so caught up. It's a great deal. We're going to do it. We're going to make a lot of money. Do that gut check. So educate yourself. Learn about the common manipulation tactics, how to recognize them. Go to the archives at maximizeyourinfluence.com and go listen to the dirty deeds of negotiation. Some are dirtier than others. Some you see all the time, but it's good just to know that it's happening and what to do about it. So manipulation can occur anytime. They happen in relationships. Manipulation can sometimes be so subtle, you're not seeing it all at first. We can add gaslighting to this. That's also in the archives. And one word to the wise, when someone's lying to you or they're manipulating you or gaslighting you, and especially in a negotiation, don't say, you're lying, you're being a manipulator. Now, I said you should do that, but if you're just trying to get a feel for it and you're catching them in a lie, if they think they're getting away with it, it'll become easier for you to detect the lie. But if you're like, oh, you're lying, you're manipulating, they're probably going to cover it up a little bit more. So there could be a time and place where you're not going to call them out. You're a liar, you're a manipulator. Just kind of back up, get a feel. What are they doing it? Why are they doing it? And if you're not calling them out, they think they're getting away with it. They're going to cover it up less and less. It'll be easier to catch them in those lies. So be more aware. You decide what you can and cannot use. My rule, pretty simple. You cross the line when it's not a win-win. You didn't reveal the information you need to, and your intent was to destroy, step on toes, take advantage of the person. You're probably manipulating, and do be careful. But like artificial intelligence says, there could be a time and place for manipulation. So manipulation exploits emotions, vulnerabilities, someone's beliefs to achieve your goal. Now, manipulation is this umbrella term, and some people use different words, like paltering. That's where you tell someone the truth, but you're concealing a lot of other information. So what you're telling is true, you're just not revealing everything you should. We've talked about gaslighting. That's psychological manipulation where the person makes someone doubt their perceptions, like they're going insane. Things like, well, that didn't happen. You don't remember it right. You're imagining things are all forms of gaslighting, which could be considered manipulation. Backstabbing, when you betray someone's trust or confidence, right? You're undermining them, you're harming them, you're pretending to be their friend or ally, but you're not. Triangulation, where a person uses a third party to manipulate or control a situation. So that can create jealousy or competition. Exploitation, when you're taking advantage of someone's weaknesses or fears. Some people call it dark or reverse psychology. Parents do this one all the time. For example, when you encourage a child to do something by suggesting they do the opposite. No, please don't eat your carrots. Please don't save them for me. Would be reverse psychology, especially if you don't like carrots. Probably crossing the line, but you get to decide if you should or should not manipulate, what tools you can and cannot use, but be aware when they're doing it to you. Otherwise, they'll take advantage of you, and you're not going to get the best terms of the deal. So take something you learned today, apply it, use it, be more aware of it. This week's special is your presentation IQ. So I'll put a link under podcast 513 at maximizeyourinfluence.com. 10 questions, take your presentation IQ assessment, helps you identify the areas you need to work on, helps me with my research, and for doing that, I will give you the webinar on how to create and deliver the perfect persuasive presentation, the formula, the format, the whole bit, because anybody can present, but is it persuasive? So check it out. Again, thanks for being here. Become a better manipulator, maybe. Become a better influencer. Learn to read people as they try to manipulate or lie to you. And of course, go out and persuade with power.